Hello students, and welcome to your third assignment in the Week 6 folder titled Week 6 Inquiry, Organizing Using Properties. You'll notice that this is a content folder, so in order to access this, you need to click on the Week 6 Inquiry, Organizing Using Properties title link. When you click on this link, it'll bring you into the content folder. There is a Week 6 Inquiry overview, a file resources item, and then the discussion post at the bottom. Now, read over the overview quick. It'll tell you what the importance is behind this activity. And then the second item is your file resources. Now, the file resources will depend on what technology you have available to you. If you have a printer, or if you don't have a printer, the way that you use these tiles will change. So let's say you do have a printer. You will only need to choose one out of the 4 files you see linked in blue. There is color and there's grayscale in terms of color. And then each one has large tiles versus small tiles. So you notice the large colored tiles take up an entire page. The smaller scale tiles, you can fit all of them on one piece of paper. It's up to you on if you want to use regular size or small scale, depending on if you want to save your resources. And then of course, again, the grayscale is similar in terms of size. And the only difference is it's gray instead of colored. So you have to choose one of these to do. If you have a printer, you'll print out the one PDF file. If you have a sibling or a friend in the class, one has to do color and one has to do grayscale. If you do not have a printer available to you, there's a little bit difference to this and how you approach this. You'll still need to have one of the files open. I recommend having the colored small scale open. It's easier to see. So once you get the colored small scale tiles open, what you'll need to do if you do not have a printer is manually draw the tiles on a piece of paper. You can use a notebook paper, computer paper, construction paper, whatever paper you want to use. Make sure you draw all of the tiles. You'll want to have all the shapes that you see in each tile and the numbers. The only thing that I'm not going to look for is the colors. So don't worry if you're unable to do the colors if you're manually drawing these on a piece of paper. So again, printer, you'll print it out. If you don't have a printer, you'll have to manually recreate the tiles without the colors on a piece of paper. Both groups will have to cut out the tiles when they're done. So you'll have all these tiles separately cut out. You'll cut them out in rectangles along those black lines like so. And you'll have all of them separated from each other. Once you have your tiles ready, that's when you will go into your Week 6 discussion piece. And it's titled Week 6 Inquiry, Organizing Using Properties towards the bottom. If I click on that title link, it brings me into the discussion. You'll notice there's nothing there. All of the instructions will be found in the Create Thread button. Once you click the Create Thread button, it opens into more information. You'll have all your tiles ready, and then it tells you what's required. So the goal of this assignment is to organize your tiles based on the properties that you see. So you see all the tiles, they have properties in terms of color, if you have color, shapes, numbers, notches on the side, things like that. Now the trick is, you don't have to use all of the properties to organize it, but you need to use properties to organize it, if that makes sense. So when you organize your tiles, you don't have to make sense of every single property you see on it, but when you do organize it, you have to pick a property in terms of how you organize this just in general. So with that being said, you have to organize all of the tiles. You shouldn't be missing any. So you'll notice you'll have 18, 23 tiles. So you have 23 tiles you have to organize. And then down here towards the bottom right, there's that blank white spot. That's your missing tile. So when we go back to this post, it says you have to lay out all your tiles on a flat surface. Whether you want to tape or glue them down is up to you if you're around an area where they might get ruined. You'll want to make sure all of your tiles are included. And then when you have everything organized based on properties, you take a picture of your layout with a phone or an iPad, whatever device you need. And then you'll need to make sure that within your picture you have your handwritten name somewhere in there. A lot of times students will write their name on a piece of the white scratch paper when they cut out their tiles and just have that in their picture. But your picture should include all of your tiles in the laid out fashion along with your name. And then you also need to hand draw or create your missing tile. which again is that blank white spot in those tiles. And you'll need to create or predict this tile based on the properties you used. There isn't necessarily a strict right answer. What I'm looking for is, did you use properties to organize your tile, and did you use properties to predict the missing tile based on what you organized? When you have that done, there is 6 questions down here for you to answer. You can do that on a separate piece of paper. You can type it in a Word document, or sometimes students simply type it down here in the submission text box. Again, it's up to you. You'll just need to answer those questions. And then there is a second part where it involves a peer review. So just to re-go through part 1, with part 1, again, you have to have all your tiles laid out. All 23 of them are involved. Take a picture of all of your tiles organized by a property that you choose, and then make sure your name's in it. And you want to make sure you have a hand-drawn version of your missing tile. And then just as a side note, none of your tables should look the same as anybody else, especially if you have a sibling in the course. There are plenty of properties that students can use to make these where they're not the same as other students. And then you have your questions that you need to answer. Now, in order to get to part 2, we have to post our part 1 responses. So let's say, put in your subject line, periodic table, whatever it may be. Let's say you answered your questions here. And then you want to attach your picture of your periodic table. You hit that Browse My Computer option like we've been doing. And then you attach your picture. And it attaches down here. And then you hit the blue Submit button to submit part 1 for grading. You'll have a second part to this piece. Now let's say you don't remember what part 2 said. Again, you can go to the Create Thread bar. That'll bring you back into this piece. So part 2 says peer review. For the last part of the assignment, go to the thread overview page, which is where we came from, and you have to look at one other student's work, and then you have to leave them feedback. So did they use a similar organization than you? Was their missing tile different from the one you predicted? Those are just some ideas that you can use. I don't want to see this is great or you did a good job. I want in-depth thought here. So look at what they used and the answers to their questions, and give them feedback and compare what you did along with what they did. So let's say I'm going to go back to my thread overview. I can click on this topic, Week 6 Inquiry, Organizing Using Properties link towards the top left. That brings me back to my thread overview. And let's say this is another student's post. I'm going to click on this blue thread link. Brings me into their work. I can look at their questions, look at their organization of their tiles. And then when I'm ready, I'll click on this blue reply link to that student's post. And then I can type my feedback in this message here. If you type your feedback in a Word document, you can always attach it in this Browse My Computer. Otherwise, again, feel free to type it here. When you have your reply done and you're giving that good feedback, you click this blue Submit button in the bottom right again, and that submits your comment. And again, all of this stuff, once you hit that Submit button, comes to me for grading. It's never separate. So just keep going and working on that. Again, do part 1 and part 2. When you're done with this piece, you can go ahead and move on to the last assignment for week 6. If you find that technology is giving you a hard time, or if you don't have some of the resources that are needed, please let me know. There are other options for this assignment. I just need to know that you need help or different resources in terms of completing this, okay? Otherwise, go ahead and go on to that last assignment for week 6.